History's most notorious serial killers. History is replete with chilling accounts of some of the most heinous crimes imaginable. While some of the atrocities that humans are capable of inflicting on one another are difficult to comprehend, there are few stories that both intrigue and repulse like those of famous serial killers. However, we won't be talking about just any criminals when it comes to serial murders. They are among the most reprehensible people that have ever walked the face of the earth. So, hey viewers, welcome back to Crime Point. Today, we'll discuss history's most notorious serial killers. Are you guys excited for this one? Without any further delay, let's dive into the video. And before that, please make sure you hit the bell icon and subscribe to our channel so you get every single update from our channel. So the first one on our list is Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy, also known as Theodore Bundy, murdered 36 women during his lifetime. Ted was a handsome, well-educated man who went on a killing spree from state to state. Looking at Bundy's background, it's difficult to believe that a man like him could kill women in such a heinous manner. Bundy came from a broken family. Bundy had no idea who his birth father was. He was raised to believe that his grandmother was his mother and that his mother was his sister. Ted's mental health suffered as a result of his difficult childhood, which is thought to have triggered his psychopathic behavior. Ted Bundy began his murderous spree in 1974 when several women went missing in Seattle. Bundy graduated from the University of Washington in 1996 and relocated to Utah. He enticed young women by pretending to be in need of assistance, then brutally murdered them after raping them. Bundy later relocated to Colorado, where he continued his killing spree. Bundy's most recent victim was a 12-year-old in Florida. He drowned the minor and then raped her later. Bundy was finally arrested in 1975 on suspicion of burglary. Following an investigation, police discovered that the burglar was actually a serial killer. He was found guilty of rape and murder and sentenced to death. Bundy was executed in an electric chair at Florida State Prison on January 24, 1989. Number 2 on our list is Jack the Ripper. In 1888, an unidentified murderer terrorized the Whitechapel neighborhood of London. The killer's primary target was prostitutes. He convinced prostitutes to join him before brutally murdering them. Using a carving knife, the killer would mutilate the bodies of these women by slitting their throats. As a result of his habit of dumping dismembered victims on the streets, the legendary serial killer became known as Jack the Ripper. When 5 such mutilated bodies were discovered in the desolate East End region, a media frenzy ensued. The police were searching the entire city for the psychopath, while the psychopath wrote taunting emails to the police detailing how he lured and murdered his victims. The serial killer killed his final victim in September and then abruptly vanished. Over the course of 6 months, Jack was responsible for the deaths of about 100 people. To this day, no one knows who the true Jack the Ripper was. However, it is widely believed that he was a butcher or surgeon, given the surgical precision with which he murdered his victims. Moving forward, next on our list, Dr. Death. Dr. Harold Shipman was a British physician who became notoriously known as Dr. Death after being arrested for the murder of over 200 individuals. He was married and had a family of 5 children. No one could have imagined that a man with such a normal existence could conduct such horrific atrocities as a physician. Shipman never got along with his doctor colleagues due to his overconfident and conceited demeanor. Shipman began practicing medicine in 1972. As a junior physician at the Donnybrook practice, he killed around 71 of his patients. His aim was old women. However, he also murdered many men. Dr. Shipman became a general practitioner in the 1980s, and the number of homicides doubled. He murdered 215 patients as a general practitioner in Hyde. In 1993, he opened his clinic at 21 Market Street and began his murderous activities. Mrs. Grundy was the last person murdered by Shipman in 1998. Kathleen Grundy's daughter refused to cremate her mother and filed charges against Shipman for not only murdering her mother, but also attempting to tamper with Mrs. Grundy's will. The victim's body was sent for an autopsy, which proved that Dr. Shipman injected her with diamorphine, pharmaceutical-grade heroin, and murdered her. Shipman was apprehended and given a life term in jail. Shipman committed himself by hanging himself in his cell on January 13, 2004. He never admitted to committing any of his atrocities. Now let's talk about Dr. H.H. Holmes and his murder castle. Henry Howard Holmes began his career by committing fraud against insurance companies. In 1886, Holmes relocated to Chicago and changed careers. He began working as a pharmacist after assuming the identity Dr. H.H. Holmes. During his time as a pharmacist, Holmes began murdering individuals for their possessions. He constructed a 3-story inn that he called his murder castle. The torture chamber of the murder castle was outfitted with gas lines, trapdoors, and soundproof rooms. It was a labyrinth from which no victim could escape. In order to torment his victims, he installed a surgical table and a medieval rack in his basement. The majority of Holmes's victims were female. He would entice young women into his murder castle, where he would choke and gas them to death with deadly gas. After murdering his victims, he would occasionally skin them and sell their skeletons to medical schools or cut them open and burn them on a burner. Holmes was apprehended on November 17, 1894, after a co-conspirator reported him to the police for failing to provide money. "I was born with the devil in me," Holmes admitted to the police. "I couldn't help being a murderer, any more than a poet can't help being inspired to sing." Police charged Holmes with 4 homicides. However, Holmes admitted to killing 27 individuals. Holmes is thought to have murdered over 200 in total. In 1896, Dr. Holmes was executed by hanging. John Wayne Gacy, aka the Killer Clown. If we're talking about crime, how can his name be left out? John Wayne Gacy threw popular block parties, volunteered in local Democratic politics, and often performed as a clown at local children's gatherings, according to the majority of his suburban Chicago neighbors. But Gacy, who had already done time in prison for sexually abusing an adolescent boy, was concealing a horrifying secret from his unobservant neighbors. In 1978, when a 15-year-old kid who had been last seen with Gacy, whose construction company the boy hoped to work for, went missing, authorities secured a search warrant for Gacy's residence. They discovered a class ring and apparel belonging to many previously reported missing young men. They were stunned to discover the decomposing bodies of 29 boys and teenagers that Gacy had raped and murdered in a 4-foot crawl space beneath the house that emanated a strong stench. Gacy attributed the stink to moisture causing mildew, despite Gacy's ex-wife's complaints for years. Families of several of the victims had previously pointed the finger at Gacy as a probable suspect, which prompted criticism of law enforcement. Gacy acknowledged killing numerous more men and discarding their bodies in a nearby lake, in addition to the bodies discovered at his residence. His attempts to offer an insanity defense were unsuccessful, and he was convicted of 33 charges of murder and executed in 1994 by lethal injection. Last on our list, but certainly not least, is Belle Gunness. In 1881, the woman who became known as Lady Bluebeard immigrated to America from Norway, settling in Chicago and marrying a fellow Norwegian immigrant. The couple had 4 children, 2 of whom died when they were young, and owned a candy store. The store had mysteriously burned down by 1900, and Gunness's husband had died. Despite the fact that both events occurred under suspicious circumstances, Gunness was able to collect multiple insurance policy payouts, which enabled her to purchase a farm in LaPorte, Indiana. 8 months after remarrying, her second husband died. Gunness claimed that he was killed by scorching water in a meat grinder. An inquiry found no evidence of foul play, leading to another insurance payout. She placed newspaper ads for a third spouse, requiring suitors to visit her Indiana farm. Several suitors made the journey, but only one survived after waking up to see Gunness towering over him. Nobody knows how many people Belle Gunness murdered, but she died violently. The farm burned in 1908. Gunness's children and a decapitated woman were among the wreckage. Although investigators identified the remains as Gunness, suspicion spread because the body was significantly smaller than Belle's. The search for her missing skull led to the discovery of over a dozen dead, including missing suitors and children. Ray Lamphere, a former farmhand she had fired and subsequently claimed threatened her life, was arrested, tried, and convicted of arson. Unverified sightings continued for decades following Belle's death. So now, we're at the end of the video, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up, smash the subscribe button, and press the bell icon so you never miss any updates. And if you have any further questions about this video, let us know in the comment box. And also make sure you check out our channel where you'll find more really cool stuff.